The Animal Detective, Sophie's Adventures. Sophie was an intelligent and curious young girl who lived in a small town on the outskirts of the city. She had always been fascinated by mysteries and detective stories and spent most of her free time reading and learning about them. Sophie lived in a cozy little house on the edge of town with her parents and her younger brother. Her father was a retired police officer who had taught her a lot about solving puzzles and finding clues. Her mother was a librarian, and Sophie spent a lot of time at the library, reading books and looking up information. Sophie was known around town for her sharp mind and her love of solving puzzles. She had a group of close friends, but mostly kept to herself, spending her time working on her own little investigations and experiments. One day, while walking home from the library, Sophie stumbled upon a strange clue that led her to believe that there was a mystery waiting to be solved in her own town. She couldn't resist the opportunity to put her skills to the test and solve the mystery. Excited at the prospect of a new investigation, Sophie headed home to start gathering more clues and piecing together the mystery. She knew that it was going to be a challenge, but she was ready for it. Sophie was out on a walk one day when she heard a faint meowing sound coming from a nearby alley. Curious, she followed the sound and found a small kitten stuck in a tree. Without thinking, Sophie reached up and gently plucked the kitten from the branches. As she cradled the furry creature in her arms, she was surprised to hear a clear, distinct voice in her mind. "Thank you for rescuing me," said the kitten. Sophie was shocked. Did the kitten just speak to her? She cautiously asked, "Did you just talk to me?" "Yes," replied the kitten. "I have been waiting for someone like you. You have the power to communicate with animals." Sophie couldn't believe it. She had always felt a strong connection with animals, but she never imagined she had any kind of special ability. She decided to test her newfound power by trying to talk to a nearby squirrel. To her amazement, the squirrel responded with a cheerful greeting. Sophie was overjoyed. She had always dreamed of being a detective, and now she had a new tool in her arsenal, the ability to communicate with animals. Excited by her discovery, Sophie couldn't wait to see what kind of mysteries she could solve with her new power. Sophie was distraught upon hearing about the missing animals from her animal friends. She immediately decided to investigate the matter and began her search for clues. She checked the local animal shelters and the streets for any signs of the missing animals, but to no avail. However, her intuition told her that something sinister was going on. One day, while walking her dog, Sophie spotted two suspicious-looking men loading cages into a truck. She recognized them as the same men who were selling animals for testing purposes. The men were brothers, named Carl and Jack, and they had a reputation for being ruthless and heartless in their treatment of animals. Sophie followed the truck and saw it stop at a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town. She watched as the brothers unloaded the cages, which were filled with a variety of animals including rabbits, cats, and dogs. Sophie was horrified to see the animals in such conditions, cramped and scared. The brothers were discussing their plans to sell the animals to a laboratory, and Sophie knew that she had to act fast to save the poor creatures. She needed to come up with a plan to rescue the animals without being caught. Sophie decided to enlist the help of her animal friends, who agreed to distract the brothers while she snuck into the warehouse to free the animals. She used her power to communicate with the animals, instructing them to make noise and cause a commotion outside the warehouse. While the brothers were busy trying to silence the animals outside, Sophie managed to sneak in undetected. She quickly freed the animals from their cages and led them out of the warehouse to safety. Sophie's heart was filled with joy as she watched the animals run free, safe, and sound. She knew that she had made a difference, and she was grateful for her power to communicate with animals, which had allowed her to save so many lives. Sophie set out on a mission to catch the two brothers red-handed. She knew they had to be somewhere in the forest, searching for new animals to capture. With the help of her animal friends, Sophie managed to track down the brothers to a hidden cave deep in the woods. She quietly approached the entrance of the cave and peered inside, careful not to make a sound. Inside, she could see the brothers huddled around a cage, discussing their latest catch. Sophie's heart sank as she realized that the brothers had captured a rare and exotic bird, the likes of which she had never seen before. Determined to catch the brothers in the act, Sophie reached for her camera and began snapping photos. She captured images of the brothers taking the bird out of the cage and placing it in a box, ready to be sold for their cruel animal testing business. As she turned to leave, Sophie's foot accidentally kicked a small rock, alerting the brothers to her presence. They turned around, anger in their eyes, and began to chase her out of the cave. Sophie ran as fast as she could, her heart pounding in her chest. But she was determined to save the bird and put an end to the brothers' cruel business once and for all. When she reached the safety of her home, Sophie showed her father the photos she had taken. Her father was horrified by what he saw and immediately called the authorities. The brothers were arrested and charged with animal cruelty, and the exotic bird was safely returned to its natural habitat. Sophie had saved the day and put an end to the cruel and inhumane actions of the animal testing bandits. She spent the next few days basking in the feeling of satisfaction that came with having helped the animals. She knew that it was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it was a victory nonetheless. As she walked around town, she couldn't help but feel like a different person. She looked at things differently now, always on the lookout for clues and signs of wrongdoing. She felt like a detective, and she liked it.